Good evening, and it's great to have you with us as we near the end of another week, but it is not going to be an easy night ahead for much of the Gulf Coast.
Hurricane Delta slamming ashore in Louisiana overnight as a Category 2 storm.
This is a big storm. We've got winds of 115 miles per hour.
The dangerous storm surge over 9 feet in some places.
Debris still piled up in neighborhoods. Lake Charles took a direct hit from Category 4 Hurricane Laura just 6 weeks ago. Homes still covered in blue tarps as families rebuild.
Those big trucks you see behind me, they're recovery and utility vehicles that have been working here for weeks, trying to put this town back together.
Hey, dude. Here we go.
One and a 2 and a 3 and a 4.
Ready?
So let's talk about volunteers. Here's the thing that's actually stuck in my head for a little while. Before my home got hit by Hurricane Laura, I didn't think a whole lot about disaster relief. When I did think about it, what I assumed was that the government would just come in and just take care of everything, and then insurance companies would come in behind that and then take care of the homes. The ratio that I had in my head was just off from what reality is.
Reality is that the first people that are there are the citizens. The citizens are the real first responders, and volunteers are the backbone of disaster recovery.
That's what we wanted to focus on with this episode, is really exploring the impact that volunteers have and how critical it is. Like, this is something that we cannot do without, but it is something that we take for granted. One of the guys that we talked to for this episode, and he said, like, every single American is going to go through a disaster in the future. Every single person is going to experience a disaster at some point. So this is a conversation that we can't wait to have later. This is a conversation we need to be having now, so that way we can better support those who are going through it now, but also so we can be supported when we go through it on our own.
We've gone from years and years without named hurricanes impacting land to where we have 2 named storms impacting the same area within 5 weeks.
To really focus in on the challenges that future volunteers are going to be facing, but the rest of us are going to be facing as well. Just the frequency and severity of these natural disasters increasing. We decided to check in with our friend Dr. Botts over at CoreLogic.
Between Katrina, Rita, Laura, Delta, is what's happening normal?
What we're seeing is not only hurricanes that are increasing in magnitude, but we're also seeing them becoming much more of a flood or water event than winds events.
What does this same risk look like across the United States?
Yeah, I think depending on where you're talking about, if we look at the Gulf coastal areas from Texas all the way Florida, hurricanes are a huge issue and hurricane-driven storm surge. Really, there's literally no place in the country that won't be free of at least some convective storm damage, hail, tornadoes, straight-line winds, wildfire, flooding.
When we talk about frequency and severity increasing, what does that mean? And how do we prepare for that reality?
If we're talking southern Louisiana, there's a number of issues here. One is you have very, very shallow offshore conditions. So when hurricanes come in, they push huge surges onshore. Very difficult to mitigate against that unless you elevate homes, build some sort of protective seawall, or retreat from the coast. And I think we're seeing all 3 of those either being pondered or in action.
The frequency and severity issue, it's depressing. It makes us want to just click off and just not think about it. But there is hope in this, and there are solutions to this problem, but we're going to have to work together to fix these things, right?
Right, because the truth of the matter is, with frequency and intensity of these storms increasing, the need for volunteers increases.
This is not something that's optional. It's not something that we can debate about. This isn't Republican or Democrat. This isn't liberal or conservative.
To find out a way forward, we took a drive up to Baton Rouge, and we met with the former FEMA director, Brock Long.
I'm Brock Long. I'm a former administrator of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and now I'm executive chairman of Haggerty Consulting.
So Brock, how long have you been doing disaster relief?
So when I entered into emergency management in 1999, my first day on the job was literally throwing everything that I owned into an apartment in Savannah, Georgia that was in a Category 1 storm surge vulnerable area, and racing up to Atlanta to the State Operations Center because Hurricane Floyd was about to cause one of the nation's largest series of evacuations from Florida to Delaware. And so I watched one of the worst evacuations in history take place. Floyd eventually impacted North Carolina and pushed up through Virginia and caused a lot of damage and destruction. And then I interviewed with FEMA Region 4 in Atlanta to become a hurricane program specialist on the morning of 9/11.
And right now we're looking at an aerial view of the Pentagon.
So my interview was going on while that was taking place. Then was promoted to hurricane program manager in 2004. The nation got hit with 4 hurricanes in 6 weeks. It was Charlie, Francis, Ivan, and Gene. And then the very next year, Katrina hit. I went through the best times in 2004 where it was rated one of the higher places to work in the federal government to the next year in Katrina. Got a random phone call from Governor Bob Riley in Alabama and thought he'd never give this dumb kid the opportunity to run a state agency, and he did. Within 2 weeks, Prattville, Alabama gets hammered with a big tornado. We had more disaster declarations than any state in the United States that year. I think it was 2008. We had more than anybody else. And then I got Deepwater Horizon.
We've had a mass casualty explosion. We need assistance immediately.
It was the BP Deepwater Horizon oil rig disaster. And so I got to go through one of the most technically complex man-made disasters in the country's history as well, as a state incident commander in Alabama. Went into the private sector for 6 years with Haggerty Consulting. I get a phone call from the White House, and it's basically, do you want to serve your country? And I got into emergency management to help other people.
So exactly how many disasters have you worked on?
You got to keep this in mind. So when I went into office in 2017, the country had gone 11 years without a major landfalling hurricane. And within 2 hours, I'm briefing them, telling them that the probability of getting hit is higher than it's ever been. We've been 11 years without being hit with a major landfalling hurricane since Hurricane Wilma. We're due. And within 2 months of being in office, Harvey hits, then Irma hits, then Maria hits. The wildfires in California hit in 2017. Following year, you had another Category 5 hurricane. We've only had 4 make landfall since 1851. Florence hit North Carolina, another wildfire, even worse than the 2017 wildfires, hits California again. If you look at the 2 years I was in office, there were over 220 different events. So if it was a declared disaster or a wildfire, every 3 days something else happens. But what you're only focused on are the ones where the nation's media comes into play. You know, they'll talk about the Harveys, the Irmas, the Marias. But where the real gap is about the disasters that the media doesn't pick up national coverage. Those communities that are hit often have a harder time overcoming disasters than the ones that get all the attention. When you get the attention, you get the volunteer organizations, you get donations coming in, you get the federal government pulling out all the tools of the toolbox to help these communities.
So how critical are volunteers in disaster relief?
I think that in the disaster recovery realm, the volunteer effort is the most critical part. The governments can only do so much because they're bound by bulky rules and policies. And while their assistance is tremendous, the humanitarian effort is really dependent on the volunteers and the church groups, the religious organizations, the volunteer organizations that are active in disasters. We cannot do housing missions without them, shelter missions without them, feeding missions without them. When they're involved and the burden upon the federal government is reduced, that's the optimal situation. And that's where doing good and figuring out a way to help your neighbor and volunteering or giving cash, doing what you can to help, the communities that go through the disasters that don't get the national media attention should be a major focus of people in the United States.
I can't imagine working over 200 disasters and just all across the country. And this is a lot of stuff that we don't see on the news. We get the biggest storms and disasters that hit. We don't get the small ones that are local communities that have just as much suffering and they're just as bad, but it's a smaller community. He witnessed it himself, like what is working, what is not working, what do we need to do differently? And one of the things that he's trying to impress on everybody is the need for volunteer movements.
Right.
We've really got to nail this thing down.
Right. Mobilization of volunteers is key to disaster response. And mobilization of volunteers can be really difficult. An organization that's done a great job mobilizing volunteers is the Cajun Navy movement. And we had a chance to sit down with Todd, who's the head of the United Cajun Navy, when we were in Baton Rouge.
Todd, can you explain how the Cajun Navy was actually formed?
Started in Katrina in 2005. It was an all-out call for boats. There was no food, there was no supplies down there. A lot of the buses were destroyed, so they couldn't get people out. You know, we got a lot of duck hunters, we got a lot of deer hunters, we got a lot of fishermen, so a lot of people have boats here. So what we've done is organize with the government to be able to go in and say, okay, what do you need us to do? And then from there, groups just formed. In 2016, the Louisiana flood, it was just flooding everywhere. 2017, Hurricane Harvey, that was mass pandemonium with recovering people with boats.
Can you tell me how the volunteers have been impacted by their service?
We had some guys that they were actually veterans, you know, and they had really, really severe PTSD. And we had some helicopters landing, and one of the guys was just really, really stressing out. And he actually started crying. This was a big guy. He never thought he would have cried. He says, I can't take this, but I'm gonna have to because these people need help. And so he really helped us in there, which was pretty interesting, you know, to see this big veteran Marine, tough guy that broke down, but he said he had to do it. So that really touched me in a big way because it was like, this guy had a breakthrough. So many volunteers have done just tremendous stuff. Not every government agency can handle a disaster because a lot of them are affected. They have so many trucks, so many boats, so many ambulances, so many people, and you take a percentage of those that are affected that can't work, that's that many less lives that can be saved. Volunteers are vital to disaster relief.
Talking with Todd and the United Cajun Navy, it's like you see how critical volunteers are to disaster relief. You know, this is the primary driving force in helping people recover, but also in saving lives. And I didn't realize I was going to witness that right after Hurricane Laura, because just around the corner we had Hurricane Delta.
Like 5 weeks, right?
Barreling straight towards us.
And it's almost impossible to prepare for a disaster when you don't have time to recover from the last disaster.
What we didn't realize was that Hurricane Laura, it knocked off a lot of the roofs and it created so much debris that it impacted our roadways. So when Hurricane Delta came in, it brought the water and it flooded so fast.
So we're downtown. Hurricane Delta is going to hit probably in the next hour or so, and there's going to be a lot of water damage.
You can see right next to that Cat 4 Laura, Delta's path.
This one coming mostly during the day, but the sheriff's saying today, not necessarily good. His guys have to wait until the winds die down. That won't happen until midnight, so first responders will have to go out in more dangerous conditions to anyone that may need their help.
I decided to embed with the Cajun Navy as they weathered Hurricane Delta and then mobilized for rescue operations.
we received word that numerous people were trapped in their homes with rising water. They had assumed since their homes didn't flood from Hurricane Laura, they'd be fine. What nobody realized at the time was that Hurricane Laura had affected the drainage systems.
So the situation is the Cajun Navy is trying to get to a house right now that's waterlocked, and it's an elderly couple that they won't be able to tread the water.
With police and fire departments spread thin, volunteers were desperately needed. But luckily, the Cajun Navy was coming to the rescue.
Dispatch, this is Antonio. We are coming in. We have 3 members and some furry friends. We'll see you in a little bit.
I think there are people out there that want to help. You don't always have to do things for money. People that can give one day, 1 week, 1 month of their time, 1 hour of their time, and do it for zero benefit is a great thing. I think we need more people like that in the world. We would have a better country, a better living community.
Hey, you got that? Cody? Got it? Yeah. Okay. All right.
You guys good?
Inch it.
Yeah.
Inch it.
Slowly, just keep going. I think I've done so much in my life that it's like my way of returning the favor.
All right, young man, we got you to this point. Attaboy.
I have an opportunity to help people right now without a care or cause in the world, and I feel like I'm obligated to do it.
There you go.
I don't think we come together enough.
1, 2, 3.
I think the toughest thing I've seen so far is the absolute devastation of homes. People have lost everything. I just want to go out and help these people. They deserve to have their home back. They deserve to have their lives back, and we all have that, and they don't.
Was that your house that we just saw?
Yes, sir.
Frequency and severity of natural disasters are increasing. You will at some point find yourself in need of others. This means that the solution to this problem is that at some point we're going to have to find a way to work together in spite of our political, religious, or cultural differences. This sounds like something that might be near impossible, but it is something that we witnessed here in Lake Charles.
Before my home got hit, I assumed that the government would just come in and take care of it all. But what we've realized, what I witnessed in the disaster and then through our research, is that volunteers are the most critical element in all of this. And we desperately need them. And they desperately need us. If you would like to support some of these disaster relief organizations, you can go to this organization called VOAD, which is the National Voluntary Organization Active in Disaster Relief. We put the link in below. On their website, you have a multitude of different organizations you can volunteer with. Now, keep in mind that at some point, you're going to need one of these organizations. So it's incredible if you could jump in now, get connected to them, and start supporting them. Whether you're donating or volunteering, everything makes a difference. And if you'd like to support the United Cajun Navy, which was featured in this episode, you can below. If we're able to monetize this video, then we're going to be donating those funds to that organization as well. We have a lot of big challenges ahead of us, but we're all in this together. And one thing that I have witnessed, both when I was in the military in the midst of all these disasters, is that heroes rise up when you need them. Hey guys, we got some other. Thank you so much, first of all, for joining in on this episode. Please like, share, and subscribe it. We're going to be donating the views, monetization of views to the charities that we cover in the episodes. So all the support we can get is going to be a blessing to those groups. We also have some other news coming out. Three Beards, Hank's band, is going to be releasing a new single called
Speaking of You. And it should be out to the radio around the 7th and streaming services and all that stuff. Wherever you like to listen, it'll be there.
Yeah, so we're going to be trying to link in stuff below into Do Good as well, so you can check that out. But until next time,
keep doing good.